Okay. Well, good morning and welcome to our NATOA chapter meeting. I'm Suzanne Bartol with the County of San Diego, multimedia designer and video producer. We appreciate you setting aside some time today to join us in discussing online public meeting best practices in light of the global pandemic. Times have definitely changed for everyone, and as usual, SCAN evolves to meet those changes. Before we get into the presentations, we have a few announcements to share. In a unanimous decision, the SCAN Board of Directors voted to extend membership for 2020 through 2021 as a result of the impacts of COVID-19 and our inability to offer continued chapter meetings, including the annual Spring Conference and STAR Awards. The board also voted to extend our terms in office for 6 months, so there's sufficient time for all members to participate in an election. Dennis Hunter will ascend to president as scheduled, and I will become immediate past president. Upcoming elections will include president-elect and 4 board seats. Election announcements will be shared on the listserv and website, and thank you so much for being here.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Suzanne. I'm Michael Smith, Cable and Community Relations Manager for the City of Torrance. Now let's get to the program. Next day, we'll hear from 3 cities on how we're delivering public meetings during the COVID-19 health crisis. California Executive Order N-25-20 placed limitations upon attendance at public assemblies and waived certain requirements under the Brown Act, allowing local legislative bodies or the state body to hold public meetings via teleconferencing. Slide. Next slide. With social distancing requirements, local governments have turned to online engagement of both audio and video, as well as audio and video to facilitate continued public participation in democracy. Whether it's through Zoom, WebEx, GoToMeetings, YouTube, Microsoft Teams, government channels continue to stay relevant during these uncertain times. Is this the new normal for the foreseeable future? Will virtual meetings become the standard instead of the exception? Or will we move to a hybrid of in-person and online meetings? Today's speakers include from the City of Santa Barbara, Board Member Tony Ruggieri and City Clerk Sarah Gorman, to share their experience, including coverage of the Brown Act. Also, we have Board Member Jack Chen, City and County of San Francisco, and be sure to ask Jack just how many boards and commissions they have and how many they actually cover. And finally, myself. So with that, take it away, Tony and Sarah.
Good morning, everyone. As Michael said, I'm Tony Ruggieri. I have been with the City of Santa Barbara for 31 years, been in my current position as City TV Production Supervisor for the past 21 years, and been a SCAN board member for almost 2 years. I did a quick back of napkin calculation this morning and figured out that I've been involved in televising about 7,500 meetings for the City of Santa Barbara in my time with them. But only 2 months ago was the first time we ever did a gavel-to-gavel virtual meeting. So we had decades of doing it a certain way, and then all of a sudden things changed, as all of you, and we all had to pivot and adapt. Joining me today in the presentation is Sarah Gorman. She's our City Clerk Services Manager. Sarah?
Hello. Hello, friends. Nice to meet you. Thanks for including me in your cool nerd group. I've been with City of Santa Barbara for 4 years, been clerking for about 10, and was an election and open meetings lawyer for about 10 years before that. So I had all sorts of respect and authority, and now I'm simply known as the PowerPoint girl during council meetings. Take it away, Tony.
Okay, Jack, back to that previous slide.
Yep, give me 1 second.
Okay.
See, PowerPoint girl, hard job. No one believes me.
Oh, no, we do.
Here we go.
Thank you. So the governor's stay-at-home order came out around March 19th. Our county health officer and our city council quickly followed suit in declaring the stay-at-home order, unless you were deemed an essential worker, which you know, a lot of us local government employees are essential. So we have been coming into the office, although probably half of our employees, full-time employees, are now working from home on a regular basis.
Speak for yourself, Tony. Some of us have been doing very poor parenting while working from home and also working.
Our last normally televised council meeting was March 24th, and we used social distancing protocols in the council chambers for that particular meeting. If you look at the picture in the slide, up on the dais, there's 4 members. They're, you know, apart by every other seat, and then the other 2 council members, let's see, there's 5 people up on the dais, sorry. The other 2 council members are out where the staff normally sits. And then if the picture showed it, any public in the room, they were socially distancing as well. So basically between March 24th and April 7th, which was the next city council meetings, we had to figure out how to do gavel-to-gavel virtual meetings. And we got up and running with our first virtual meeting on the April 7th, and since then we've televised about 50 meetings virtually. Next slide, please, Jack. And Sarah.
Very good. So then we had, once we were able with the governor's order to close the meetings to the public, then we switched to GoToWebinar so the meetings could be done electronically. We weren't able to do that until there was the official fiat from the governor. So we still allow members of the media to be on site, but it is closed to the public. The media, as in the 2 beat reporters for the 2 main papers in town, came to that first meeting and said, oh great, I can watch this from home, and hadn't been back until the past couple meetings when we've had tremendous public commenters because of the protests happening in America.
So we decided to, we looked at various options. We decided to go with Log Me In. They have a local office out in Goleta, and their products are GoToWebinar, GoToMeeting, GoToTraining, and then they have another voice product called Open Voice. Log Me In actually reached out to us when the state's lockdown order came out. We set up a demo with their staff to demo GoToWebinar because it became apparent that was sort of the product that was going to best fit our needs. And they demoed it for key staff. They gave us 90 days for free. And Jack, we're going to stay on the slide for a minute. So we're using GoToWebinar for all of our public meetings, but we also have GoToMeeting that we use for staff meetings. So GoToMeeting is sort of our internal staff only way that we're communicating virtually these days. At first, our IT staff was swamped implementing our remote desktop system for, you know, city staff to work from home. We've jumped, I think, from about 60, we have 1,000 full-time employees. We jumped from about 60 people working from home on a regular basis to several hundred. So, and that was over that 2-week period. So IT was busy trying to deal with that. So when we got into GoToWebinar, they really couldn't provide the necessary support for the first bit of doing these meetings. So we paid for 1 month of Log Me In support. That cost us $8,000 for the month. And basically we had a Log Me In trainer as a co-moderator for every meeting we did in that first month, which was really helpful. They got us through.
So helpful.
As Sarah will talk about, they got us through that first month. They also came to appreciate what we do on a regular basis and what it's like sitting in on a city council meeting and how those work. So they learned a lot. We learned a lot from them, and that got us through. You know, that got us into that that first month of meetings and got our staff trained. Let's see, Sarah, you wanted to jump in. Ultimately, one more thing, ultimately our IT staff has now taken over training for all city staff on how to use GoToWebinar and GoToMeeting after that initial 1 month period.
I was just going to say, we ended up having, there were about 6 of us that were trained by the LogMeIn staff and really jumped in at the beginning, doing infinite numbers of practice GoToWebinars at our, at our houses and at the office, just trying to figure out how to use it. And one of our really spectacular planners who took over doing all this learning and teaching for our community development, which is a big job because we have a bunch of design review boards. She was very, very good, very bright, but you'll see had some issues with her background. So you'll see her in an upcoming slide. I do recommend doing as many practice sessions as you can, which I'm sure everyone has figured out also. Practice sessions are key. You make your mistake with your friends and not for the public.
Yeah, and the two pictures in the slide, the one on the left is GoToMeeting, that's a staff meeting going on, and then the one on the right is a city council meeting. After the free 90 days, we signed a 1-year contract with LogMeIn, and that contract is costing us $34,700 for a year. That gives us 800 licenses of GoToMeeting and 120 licenses of GoToWebinar, which works out to about $40 per month per license. Next slide, Jack. So our virtual meeting setup at the moment is the mayor and the city administrator participate from the city council chambers using their webcams. They're the only people in the chambers, unless, as Sarah said earlier, one of the members of the media pops in to get a couple pictures or some video for a story. But they're the only people currently in the chambers. That's that picture up on the left, the vacant council chambers, and you can kind of back there see the mayor at her seat and the city administrator. And the reason we do this because the proximity allows for them to easily communicate during the course of a meeting to address any logistics or meeting issues that pop up. They can mute their microphones if somebody else is speaking, or mute their cameras and kind of chat with each other and communicate on anything that comes up during the meeting. All other staff, council members, and the public are participating remotely. The council members and staff are for the most part, are in their offices. We strongly encourage them to participate from their city hall offices. And the reason we do that is because it's easier for us to get IT support to them if something crashes during the meeting. This past Tuesday, for some reason, the mayor lost Wi-Fi on her laptop. So she was gone from the meeting for a few minutes. IT person ran upstairs and helped her get it back running, and it was pretty seamless. We were able to get her back up and running after a few minutes. Sarah?
We have had, we do greatly encourage folks to come into their office for council meetings, even if they're doing sort of GoToMeetings and staff meetings at home. Because of the controlled environment, we had a council member for one of our meetings. We had a marathon, a couple of meetings, about 14 hours total on Tuesday. And so she did the first part of the meeting from home, which all went well until her toddler objected to the dad putting sunscreen on her face and instituted a rebellion by running in and turning off mom's laptop and declaring that she was important. And I explained this to my 9-year-old child, who said, "You could still do council meetings at home. I wouldn't do that." And I said, "Don't we fight about sunscreen?" And she said, "Yes." And that's why we say, come to the office, controlled environment, and you can shut your door and your Wi-Fi is better.
And at some point, we are anticipating, once the stay-at-home orders relax, hopefully they will in the near future, that we will have some council members actually back in council chambers using social distancing protocols, and will start using the cameras again in the chambers and using that feed of people in the room sending through the webinar and then having them be able to interact in the room with people that are still virtual. So we've done the technical work to make that happen, and we are prepared for that in the future. Next slide, Jack.
So talking about, I think, are we at the next slide yet?
Yeah, Jack, go forward one.
One more slide, please. Talking about the features of GoToWebinar, which this all was very daunting at the beginning, and then after you do 9,000 practice sessions, you get more comfortable with it. You can have X amount of panelists and X amount of attendees. Panelists are essentially your council members and staff, people you want to be able to just speak up, turn on their webcam, answer a question without being controlled by me. So we have, you can start with 24 panelists, and everyone else comes in as attendees. So members of the public are attendees. They are muted until I unmute them. And because there's only 24 panelists, that can be created at the beginning. If we have more staffers than that need to get in, which we always do, I have them come in as attendees, members of the public. I see their name and I elevate them to the panelist level immediately. I have to mute them immediately. If you come in as a panelist, you're unmuted. So it's this game of please let me mute immediately. Really, my worst nightmare is not muting people in time and having people swear on camera, which happened at a meeting 2 weeks ago. And I said, my only goal for the next meeting is to have that not happen. And then it happened again. So I'll tell you about that in a second, but it wasn't me swearing either time, which is important. So you can have up to 1,000 attendees, or you can expand to 3,000. We had at the meeting 2 weeks ago, 477 attendees, and it worked fine. It wasn't buggy, it was fine. We do have all the panelists log in an hour before the meeting to test because, you know, maybe their Wi-Fi doesn't work today, maybe their webcam isn't working. So we have council and staff log in early. It works, then they can turn off their webcam, mute themselves, and, you know, go get some food before the meeting. The attendees, who are the members of the public, need to register before the meeting. We had much discussion on how to have these attendees indicate what item they wanted to speak on, and we settled on them raising their hand within the app. It's a little button they can hit to raise their hand, and I see who's raised their hand. So they get to a particular item, they raise their hand, and I call on them. Folks do need to have a smartphone to participate. And those attendees come in unmuted. I will, when it comes for time for me to call on a person, I say their name, I unmute them, I say, Catherine Ross, you have 3 minutes, please go ahead. And then I desperately try to mute them after they're done before they say anything awful to people in their houses. So the excitement last week was that we had a lot of public speakers. Mayor asked me, Ms. Gorman, how many public speakers do we have? I said, looks like about 154 or so. And unfortunately, I said 154, an unnamed high-level staff person had their mic on, spilled a drink on their lap right then, and said, oh, expletive. So what the public heard was 154 speakers, oh, blank. It was awful, and my hand like moved to mute it, and it was too late, and I just saw it in my, if I could move back time five seconds, but it wasn't me. That was the most important thing. And various public speakers mentioned it because they thought there was a reaction to the number of public speakers, and eventually that staffer got on and said, no, 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 here's the reason. And so that was, that's what Tuesday was like. So stay muted until you want to talk. So I do read the names of public speakers from an attendee list, and we developed a 3-minute countdown timer for public comment. Right. Next slide, please. So staff developed this spiffy PowerPoint slide timer we put up for each public comment. Jack, I think you can see either this one or the next one. See if you can activate it. I'm not sure if it's working for us.
Yep, there it goes.
Look how it advances.
Wow.
Like death comes for us all. Click, click, click. We did discover that we need to have 2 people essentially doing this, acting as the organizer or the moderator of the meeting, because if you touch this timer, if you do anything on your computer, even look at the attendee list or chat with someone, then it stops the timer, which is what I found out at the meeting where I said, no, I can do everything. I don't need to have a second person helping me with the timer. And then it just stopped halfway through a gadfly speaking, and the mayor had to have her iPhone timer up, and it's never a good sign when the mayor has to text you that their iPhone battery is dying because they've been using their timer. So I delegate. We have a wonderful, again, highly overqualified staffer running the timer, and it works great. All right, next slide, please. And that's perfect, end of time. Okay, a little bit more about the features. You can have 6 webcams active on the screen at one time. That's a difference between GoToWebinar and Zoom. And that actually has worked really well. We thought it would be challenging because we have 7 council members plus city attorney, city administrator, et cetera, et cetera. But what we have is essentially the mayor on screen most of the time. And then if anyone else wants to talk, they turn on their webcam and the mayor then acknowledges them. So it works like a kind of public request to speak. It's less faces for people to focus on, a little bit less Zoom fatigue. So I think it actually works pretty well. But our goal was to make these virtual meetings as close to the in-person meetings as possible. All the votes are done as a roll call, essentially like a telephonic meeting under the Brown Act, when council members would go to deepest Mongolia and then hold a public meeting from their hotel room. That same concept, everything's a roll call. We do need a ton of staff for this, and I know all of you know this, that it looks seamless because you have a bunch of people working really hard behind the scenes. So you need to have the moderator, that's the role that I serve. I have one of my deputy city clerks watching from home and actually doing the clerking, doing the minutes. And then we have a person that runs the PowerPoint and the timer, again, deeply qualified, but is PowerPoint guy, and then all the tech staff. And we did send out a training bulletin to all the staff on best practices on participating in a GoToWebinar session. Next slide, please. Tony?
So just briefly, in the training bulletin, we just tried to give staff and council member, a simple, 5 points to watch for each meeting. So their video and audio quality would be as good as possible. Audio is key in these virtual meetings. We encourage people to use a wired headset that includes headphones and microphones instead of wireless. It's just one less potential point of failure in case there's a battery issue, or if your Bluetooth with your headset disconnects for whatever reason. Another key one is mute yourself when you're not talking.
Yes, mute yourself.
We've had
learn.
I'm sure everybody has. We've had all kinds of dog barkings and people asking questions of their family members, and then in the infamous expletive from last meeting. We've tried to show people how to properly frame their cameras. That is kind of a challenge. So I think Sarah mentioned we do a test before every meeting and have people just log on, make sure that we see them. We'll try to have them adjust their cameras at that point. Tell them to be aware of their background. And also try not to have food and drink. We've had a couple people eat and drink during the meetings, and that can be distracting as well. So here's a few examples of some things that have happened visually. Obviously, we don't have any audio in these. As we all know, our regular council meetings are pretty formal. We follow Rosenberg's rules of order for a meeting. There's a defined process to hear every item, and we practice general decorum in these proceedings. The tech staff has control over all the camera shots, the audio shots, presentation feeds in our normal meetings. So in these virtual meetings, we push that out to the user, and that's where the problems come in. So it's not always the case. In this first picture here, that's our police chief on the right. I don't know over her shoulder if you can see a tail. And go to the next slide, Jack. And that's her cat that decided the cat wanted some camera time and kind of walked around on the credenza behind her for a little bit, which was entertaining. Next slide. And apparently cats may be the mascot of our city, because here is one of our, on the right, the upper right there. Next slide, Jack. That's one of our assistant planners moving his cat away from his webcam, because the cat just walked up and blocked the webcam in this case. So that was fun. Next slide. Be aware of your background. This particular planner, who we love and has done
it was one of our trainers.
One of our trainers has done a great
amazingly
job.
Smart person.
Next slide, Jack. She's got a light fixture right behind her head that looks kind of like a hat. And then she's also in her kitchen. So we've noticed, and she's mentioned this in a couple meetings, her husband, she never realized how much her husband goes to the refrigerator to get snacks. And we'll see him pop in occasionally walking behind her. Next slide, Jack. This is one of my favorites as a video person. My pet peeves is when people have the bright window directly behind their head. We think this might be this person on the top there. This is during a council meeting. It might be one of our city attorneys. We're not positive. Next slide. He's in the shadows, so we have no idea. And then it's the voice from the shadows. Next slide, Jack. This is one of our staff people who is working. He turned on his webcam by mistake. This is during a council meeting. He's standing up at his stand-up desk working, and we just see his torso. Next slide.
That's my what the face.
Yeah. And Sarah fortunately caught it in time and muted his camera, because as moderator of the meeting, she has control of doing that.
That was my desperate hand again, and the only way I could do it was dismiss him from the meeting. So I texted him like, "You come back when you're ready."
And next slide, please. So just some technical considerations. We added 2 new computers to our broadcast system and scan converters. That converts the television or the computer screen into a video signal and allows us to put those video signals into our broadcast system. So that is now, those computers are now in our office. And that just makes it much easier to have them in the control room, so our staff can connect to the meeting and broadcast it easily. We have computers for presentations, but they're in the meeting rooms. And so our technical staff really doesn't have easy access to those during these virtual meetings. So we move that stuff down here. Mentioned this before, we strongly encourage all city staff to use wired headphones and microphones because of the battery issues. We had to make some modifications to our audio systems in the 2 wired meeting rooms, our city council chambers and another room. Because when you have people participating in room and virtually at the same time, you've got some audio feedback issues to deal with. We have not had a meeting where we've had people participating from the room on television at the same time as being virtual, but we're ready to do that. And I think that's coming pretty soon. I'm hoping it is. And we'll start having some people on site. Audio is key. You can always conduct a meeting without somebody's video. And then if we have computer audio issues with a panelist in GoToWebinar, the moderator, usually Sarah, can contact them through the chat function and switch them over to a telephone connection, which usually is a good resolution. And next slide, Jack. That concludes our portion, and I'm going to turn it over to Jack Chin from the City and County of San Francisco. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. I'm Jack Chin again, City and County of San Francisco. Oops, my slide. So just a little bit about us. We're a city and county, so we have a board of supervisors instead of a city council. Our Board of Supervisors have 11 district members with 7 committees each, or 7 committees on our board. And then our city have over 66 boards and commissions. For us, SFGov TV, we're the government cable TV channel, and we normally, before COVID, we cover 34 of those boards and commissions. So we do a lot of meeting coverage. So when we set out on this process to do virtual meetings, we were giving a very short time frame. And I think like everybody else, you know, we looked at all the different meeting platforms or video conferencing platforms. And I think our emergency order was declared on March 18th. And then within 7 days, we got our virtual meeting going. And part of our selection process was that because we're such a big city, we needed a system that everybody can access. And a lot of the systems that we looked at were fairly costly in terms of a citywide rollout. We have 30,000 employees or 30,000 plus employees in the city. So we decided to use a product that was already built into a solution we had in-house, and that was Microsoft Teams and Teams Live Event. The Teams is part of the regular Office subscription if you already have Office, and the integration, you know, it's rolled into our current Active Directory system. So that meaning that, you know, anybody that we can access in our emails and in our communication systems, we can access them through Teams, right? So then it's not just the council meetings that, or the board meetings that we're trying to put online. At the same time, we're trying to figure a way for people to communicate as well. So within the office environment, rolling out Teams, you know, we didn't have to go through installation with the users. You know, it was a pretty easy rollout for us. And the big plus is that, you know, there wasn't any additional cost for the Teams solution. And then so the next step in terms of getting the board meetings online is Teams comes with another product called Teams Live Event. And Teams Live Event, what it is just the webinar version of the video conferencing. You can have up to 10,000 viewers. It has built-in closed captioning through AI. And then the other really nice feature that we found is that it automatically translates up to 6 different languages. And they have a total of like 30, I think 38 language that you can choose from to translate to. And then the other big plus also is that the software itself mimics our regular production workflow environment. So it was a pretty simple, or it was easier for our staff to learn in that sense. And then because we only cover 34 commissions out of the 66 in the city, we were also looking for a solution that commissions can utilize without having us involved in terms of covering their meetings. So this is the workflow that we came up with in terms of setting the live meeting environment up. So at the heart of this is the live meeting itself. So this is how the panel looks like here, if you can see it here. And then essentially in the beginning, you know, we had a hybrid of board members calling in from their office and board members being on remote. And now, you know, we pretty much moved to a all virtual environment. On average, in terms of our full board meeting, we have about 60 people, 60 plus people that are attending. That includes all the department heads, city attorneys, all their staff, people that need to do presentations. And then so for the public comment portion, we set up a audio bridge to connect onto our Teams meeting. And the reason we did this initially was we were worried about disruptions from the public, people jumping onto a meeting with all the board members and potentially disrupting the meeting. So we came up with this solution through AT&T, and it was already another system that we had in place. We've been using it for 10 years, but we never knew they had this moderated public speaker function that was built into it. So we basically set that up to be able to connect into our board meeting. And then from there, on the output of it, or like going out to the public, there is a separate, the webcast function from Teams live event itself. That's one point where the public viewer can view that. And that's where it has all the translations and the automatic closed captioning that's built into there. And then the second output goes into our regular production flow, into our control rooms. We take that through a frame sync / scan converter, and then goes into our production studio where we add all the graphics, information about the meeting itself, the agenda items and all of that stuff in our control rooms. And then from there it goes out to our regular feed through Granicus onto our website, and then out to our cable TV channels. So that's basically our workflow process for setting up the virtual meetings. So because Teams is integrated with the rest of the Microsoft products, or like our Outlook calendars, setting up a meeting or setting up a live event is fairly easy. You can schedule it directly out of your calendar, and then you set up all the parameters for the meeting itself. In terms of presenters, there's no limit on the number of presenters that you can have, right? It's essentially they'll come in, if they have their video on, we can put them on the screen, and then this also gives us a lot of control over presentations. So this is how the Teams live environment looks like. Essentially, you have your preview screen and your program screen, and then all your video feeds come in on the bottom here. And people that have their videos turned on, we can post those participants directly into the program. And then again, when they're doing presentation, we have the ability to control all their presentation, without them having to do that. They can also share the presentation themselves as well. So it's depends on how they want to do that. And then the other feature that's really useful in Teams is a chat function. So there's a internal chat that the participants utilize in the meeting itself, and that doesn't get displayed onto the public view. On the public view, on the chats, when a member of the public want to ask a question, it comes in and it's moderated. So that's another nice feature about that, is essentially the staff person that's controlling the meeting. If somebody wrote something that's inappropriate or something like that, they don't need to display that for public view. It could, they can just basically ignore it. And so this is our latest view in the meeting display itself. It started out with, when we started out this process, Microsoft only allowed to display 4 square or 4 video at a time. And a lot of the board members, complained that they weren't getting enough face time in the meeting itself. And but now Microsoft just upgraded their product, and they added a lot of new features in it, where you have more viewer displays. And the nice thing about this display is also it's dynamic, so that basically if the users come in and out, the size of the video changes as users pop in and out of the meeting. The other nice thing about the Teams environment is that Teams is not just for video meetings. It also is integrated with a live chat communications platform and file sharing. So in terms of collaboration, this has become a core of our communications now, with everybody working from home. So it's very easy, for staff to do video meetings together and be able to communicate live without having to use another app. So that's another big plus in terms of integrating the Teams product into our environment. And then in the Teams live event, there's a lot of stats and reports that you can pull out of the meeting itself. You can get information in terms of where the viewers are coming in, the questions they post. You can get a transcript from the meeting itself. So that's kind of really nice to have for the meetings that we don't cover. So the meetings that we cover, we provide closed caption for them. And then for the meetings that we don't cover, they still have that ability to get a transcript file through the caption or the AI caption that's built into the system. And this just gives you an overview, or like an idea of costs. This is for the business user, because we're a government agency. We have the enterprise licenses. We're probably on the upper tier of the spectrum. I think we pay somewhere about $30 per user, but we were paying that previously already with the rest of the Microsoft products like Outlook, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, etc. So we already were subscribing to the service, and then the Microsoft Teams is an added application on top of that. So it didn't cost us anything to roll out this service. So to give you an overview of the AT&T Conference Bridge system, the Conference Bridge system can accommodate up to 500 callers. I think our max we had was 250 callers at one of our planning commission meetings. And then the nice thing about this system is that it's a moderated system. We have one operator that's controlling or moderating the public comment line. So as the members of the so this is the interface screens on the bottom here of the different menus that you have with the system. And as the public callers call in, the moderated person has a visual view of who's on the line, and they have a lot of control in terms of muting the speaker and putting them or kicking them out, if they misbehave somehow, or they start disrupting the meeting. So the nice thing again with the moderated system is that when the public is ready to give their comments, when we open the public comment line, the public commenter can queue themselves in or basically hit 10 on their touch tone, and that will put them into a queue to speak. Right, the system puts the speakers in orders that they punch themselves in. So as they punch themselves in, they get lined up into a speaker queue, and then the moderator communicates to the chair and let the chair know like how many people are on the line. And then once he put it into question and answer mode, there's automated system prompts that tell the public speaker like when they're unmuted, and that they can start to provide their public comment. At a board meeting, it's usually 2 minutes, and then at the commission meeting, it's usually 3 minutes. So the operator that's running the system in the back end, they can hit the buttons when their time is up, and then it'll there's an automatic announcement from within the system saying that your speaking time is up. So it's a really nice system in that it gives automatic directions to the public speakers, and then also that the system is separate from the main meeting itself. So then there's more control for us on the back end in terms of not having any public speakers interrupt the meeting itself. Oh, let me go back to this screen. So just as we got everything running very smooth, then the AT&T system, because it's a legacy system over 10+ years old, it started crashing on us when we get like a couple hundred people on the call. And sometimes it would even crash on us, when we just have like 15, 16 people on the call. So it became a very unreliable system. And because it's a legacy system from AT&T, like all the documentations that we found were, from 2000, referencing to like, using Netscape and all this stuff. So we had to find another solution to replace that, right? So then that's when we started looking at WebEx. So WebEx is another video conference system through Cisco. Right, and initially we looked at WebEx as a replacement for the AT&T conference bridge line, right? So the nice thing about WebEx is that in WebEx it's essentially a single platform, where you can have the video meeting and the public speakers all on the same call. And WebEx gives you a lot of user control over the attendees, which are the public members. And it has a unique feature where if we mute them, they won't be able to mute themselves. And then usually we facilitate that, in terms of the public speaker by using the virtual raise hand function. And then in WebEx, it supports up to 30 grid tile views for the video. One of the biggest complaints that we got from teams is that it was limited to 4 grid views. And for the bigger commissions that have a lot of members, they want to see each other speak and stuff like that. And this was an easier way for them to communicate. And similar to Teams, WebEx also has up to 10,000 viewers. And essentially, the viewer count, you can really just tailor that to your need. whether it's 1,000 users or 500 users. It's just that our system built in from Cisco, it came with 10,000 users. And then again, for the WebEx system, it's no additional cost for our city. And this is because the system comes with our telephone system. We're in the process of upgrading all of our telephone systems into VoIPs from the old POTS lines or the analog lines. So this was again another system that was readily available to us at no additional cost. Excuse me. So WebEx, it is very flexible. And this view here, this shows the public attendee view, along with the video view. On the Teams meeting, it usually takes anywhere from 2 to 4 people to run the meeting. And that depends on how big the meeting is and how complex the meeting is. And we found with WebEx, we were able to reduce that to just 2 people max. Sometimes we can run it with just 1 person during the meeting itself, being the public moderator. Once everybody's in the meeting, the attendees, that's members of the public, or if one of the panelists came in as an attendee, it's very easy to elevate them into the panel for them to participate into the video meeting. And then for the public speakers, has a similar function to the AT&T system. The people that are dialing into the telephone line, they punch *3 on their telephone to get into the speaker queue. And then when they get into the speaker queue, it orders or it puts them into a speaking order. So as they punch themselves in or hit the raise hand button on their video feed, they get put into a speaker line, sort of. And then the moderator person goes to and unmutes the person. This one doesn't have the system announcements like the AT&T system. So our moderator just tells the person that it's their turn to speak, and then they finish speaking, and then the moderator would tell them that their time is up, and they unmute them. And so again, the nice thing with this is that once the moderator mutes the public speaker doesn't have the capability to unmute themselves back. And WebEx live event have a lot of features built into it. This is just a snapshot of one of the screens. You can do things like surveys in the actual meeting itself. You can also do registrations if you're doing like a registered seminar to get speak or attendee information and all of that. So WebEx it's has a lot of extra features built into it that our community outreach group is starting to use this function to do polls and surveys with community members that are participating in their meeting. The other nice feature about WebEx is that once all the participants join into the meeting itself, there is a practice session that you can enter into. And so essentially, once you're in the practice session mode, all the comments and all the communication between the members, that doesn't go out into the live stream itself. And then so once you're ready to go live, then you end your practice session, and then that's when you go live. So that's a really nice feature that we utilize for people to come in, get ready with their video, have communications about logistics, and then when they're ready to go live, then they go live. And then this just gives you a breakdown of the costs. WebEx does have a free version that you can utilize, and this is the their pricing for it. Just to give you an idea of what it would cost. Only the host person or the person that's putting together the meeting needs to have an account. Everybody else that's joining the meeting, they don't need to have an account. They can join by essentially a web browser or through the app itself. The app is free to download as well. So some of the lessons that we learned in terms of our process, the team's environment, it's for at least for our experience, because the way the city is set up with the Microsoft or the rest of the Microsoft products, it's a very secure environment, meaning that people within the city and county of San Francisco with a SF-Gov email, they can join the meeting very easily. But for our outside attendees, we end up having to do a registration process with them. And essentially, that is to authenticate them into the Microsoft system. So, we found that to be very cumbersome, because a lot of our commission members, they're volunteers and they're not part of the city system. So, and then a lot of them, they're not very tech savvy. So we end up having to go through a very lengthy process with them to register them. So it became kind of a unsustainable process for us. And then the other lessons is really, with any of these meeting systems, I think it's very crucial to have a second backup system running, either in parallel or ready to go. We had instances where our main, oops, go back here. Oops. Sorry, my mouse is ticking over. So the computer that's running our Teams meeting, it freezes up for some reason, and then it doesn't stop the meeting itself, but we lose control of the meeting flow from our control room perspective. And then the other part is our dialing system. So because of the numerous failures that we had with the dial-in system itself, we really needed a second backup system. And then just some of the stats that I wanted to highlight. When we first started, our first board meeting had over 500 viewers on just the Teams view or the Teams feed itself. So because of the detailed analytic reports that we get through Teams, we can really see like where the constituents are coming in from, and it gave a lot of details in terms of the participants. And so over the last 3 months, our main function or our main mission have been training all of our commissions to go online themselves. Right, so right now we have about 38 commissions trained out of the 66 that we have in the city, and we actually have a lot more because of the all the advisory bodies and all of those. They want to do their meetings as well, and then our highest caller or public calling line was about 250, with 88 of those people wanting to speak. So it really, our experience with the online meeting is that it made the meetings a lot longer because a lot more people can participate, which is a really good thing. It's convenient for people to, dial into a meeting and provide their public comment while they're at home. So, it has, I'm sure that's a lot of your experience as well. It has increased the length of our meetings. And then also for the board members, because, they're at home and they're very comfortable. So the meetings tend to run a lot longer than normal. So this was our very first board meeting, and you can see in the beginning, oop, my mouse is going off again. You can see in the beginning, none of the board members were turning on their video except the clerk, and only when they're when it's their turn to speak, they started to turn on their video. And now everyone's very comfortable with the meeting environment. So again, like our biggest complaint now is that people don't get enough face time on the virtual meetings. So that concludes my presentation, and we'll have a question and answers at the end. Next, I'll turn it to Michael Smith.
Hello again. You've already got a great picture of how Santa Barbara and San Francisco deliver their meetings, and I see we're all having very similar experiences. Except in Torrance, we don't have cats and spouses in the background. Staff isn't allowed on screen. So now for Torrance. Go ahead and advance the slide, please.
Yep.
So Jack, I'll just say next, and you can just keep moving along.
Okay.
So our initial meeting was audio only. It didn't last very long. It was primarily for the City Council to ratify executive orders issued by the city manager next. After stumbling a few times, and that image is blurred on purpose. Next, we developed what you're seeing next.
Sorry.
These slides are going to move pretty quick, Jack. So we developed what you're seeing on the screen. Actually, I think you skipped a slide. Go back. Well, I guess it's not there. We developed what you're seeing on the screen, and that's my flow chart, which we'll see a little later. Go ahead and go to the next. We provide our meetings, both audio and video, using Zoom, a webinar to deliver the video, next. And a conference call bridge, CenturyLink Global, to deliver the audio. We keep them separate so that, I think someone mentioned earlier that they lost their Wi-Fi signal. Using a conference bridge allows those participating to remain on the phone line and continue to participate in the meeting as opposed to being completely out. So we keep them separate, and it's worked out really well. And by the way, full disclosure, none of us are endorsing any of these products. We're just sharing what we use. Next. And that's the screen for the cost of Global Meet. Next. So the meetings are distributed in standard definition cable TV, over-the-air broadcast, and streaming through Granicus. Next. We also stream, in high definition on YouTube and Facebook. The meetings, audio and video for the public viewing is managed in the studio control room. Next. The Zoom feed is a source input on the video switcher. A graphic border is provided to hide the Zoom feature at the top and bottom of the screen. And the lower third and branding graphics are added as needed. Audio is a direct feed from the call bridge. And next, so when you tune in during most of the meeting, you will see a branded PowerPoint slide. That's a shot of our rocket ship park Most people in the South Bay know where that is. It's up on the hillside. That's a great view of most of the city. And on a super clear day, you can see downtown Los Angeles. Next. So outside of the branded slide that takes up about 2/3 of the screen, the mayor and the city council, they take up the remaining 1/3. Next. Occasionally, the slide will be removed and the elected officials will be full screen. Staff participates via audio only, and with the exception of the public, whenever anyone speaks, a lower third graphic displays their name. And how does all this work? Next. And there's my screen. The meetings are conducted as would any public meeting. The mayor and the council are provided a script indicating the order of business and who will be making routine motions. The call center, the TV team, and the managers, and the city managers and city attorney's office also have a copy. We all follow the mayor's lead. If I can direct you to the top left corner of the screen in navy blue boxes are the elected officials, staff, consultants that may speak. Top right in gray is the public. The in-house team has a direct audio connection to Global Meet or the phone bridge as shown by the arrows from the left. Feeding right into the center light blue box. The public calls into a published phone number that is shared throughout the meeting, both verbally and on screen. The public will eventually be sent to the phone bridge. Next. Prior to each city council item, the mayor announces we are considering item X, and if you wish to be heard, call in now. We give an extra 2 minutes as the at-home viewing is most likely delayed depending on the streaming device. Granicus is usually 30 seconds behind. YouTube and Facebook vary depending on when you refresh your screen. Once the caller connects to the call center, the caller is greeted and asks their name and the item they wish to speak. The operator then provides direction to the caller, such as mute your sound, follow the meeting through the phone and not their viewing device. Once their name is announced, begin speaking. And they have up to 3 minutes and will automatically be disconnected. At that point, the operator transfers the call to the call manager who runs the phone bridge. The manager places the caller in a queue via web-based software, including their name, item number, and the order in which they called. When the mayor asks if there are any callers per item, the call manager announces the name of the caller and tells them to begin speaking. At the conclusion of the 3 minutes, the manager informs the mayor of the disconnection and if there are additional callers. Next slide. When there is a need for a break, once the mayor calls for a recess, the bridge audio is faded out and the on-screen video is switched to a TV graphic that matches the PowerPoint branding. And then we say we're out. Participants, with the exception of the public, remain on the call Zoom until the meeting is called back to order. During closed session, everyone except the participants disconnect from the call and the video. We wait until we receive a text message to log back in at the conclusion of the closed session. Now on screen, this year we conducted our first district elections. And on this special occasion, we switched from the Zoom meeting to our actual city council chambers to conduct swearing in. Next, of the 3 newly elected members. This was followed by pre-recorded segments, acceptance speeches, and then we returned to the Zoom meeting. Next. On another occasion, as a result of the district election, next, a vacancy was created. The council voted to appoint a new member rather than a costly special election, which I'm sure most of you have experienced. All candidates that submitted applications for consideration were invited to speak up to 3 minutes. Their picture was displayed if they submitted. And following deliberations, the council appointed a new member, and once again, we switched to the city council chambers for the swearing in. Next slide. Now that about does it for Torrance. You can view our meetings on torranceca.gov. or on Torrance City Cable YouTube. Next slide. I think both San Francisco and Santa Barbara covered just about every detail that you'd want to know. And but if we didn't cover anything, one, the meeting today will be available along with our PowerPoint slides will be available on our website. And if we didn't cover anything, now is your chance. We're open for Q&A. Please raise your hand electronically or manually if your video is on screen, and we'll call on you. You can also type in your question in the chat box and we'll take a look. And be sure to unmute your mic when it's time for you to speak. Do we have any questions? If you don't want to raise your hand, just go ahead and unmute your mic and start speaking. So does that mean we've covered everything? Or are you guys just being shy, you don't want to talk? Mark Jaffe, do you have a question? Former board member Mark Jaffe, former board member.
Be on the spot. I'm good. I appreciate the presentation.
Michael Friedman, the man who takes care of all details and doesn't miss a dot or a comma. Do you have a question?
I'm sure for all the city council meetings I'm running now, I think you've answered all my questions.
So says the retiree. Anybody else? Seeing none, I guess we want to thank everybody. On behalf of the SCAN Board of Directors, we'd like to thank everyone for attending our free webinar. Do consider joining our chapter if you're interested. We put on a lot of great programs throughout the year. This year has been interrupted quite significantly. We were unable to have our annual spring conference, which we enjoyed in the 30-something year, I can't remember now, and our annual Video Star Awards competition. So hopefully we'll be able to continue that next year, and you can get a lot of benefit from being a member of our organization. So I'll pass it off to Sarah, Jack, and Tony, and Suzanne if you have any and Jack if you have any closing statements.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, in terms of the whole process, I think everybody is getting so used to working at home now, and you know, there's definitely, you know, advantages with every system. So I think it's really tailored to, you know, what you need in your particular city, and you know, I hope we gave you a good overview in terms of the different systems that we're using today.
Yeah, thanks everybody so much for joining us. It was great to connect. A lot of us have not had a lot of contact with other people, and others have been working almost 7 days a week. It's been, but regardless, I think we haven't had as much social contact with the outside world. And I want to thank everybody for joining us today and getting a chance to talk about the different ways we do these things.
Anybody else? Anybody thought of a question before we close?
Wanted to make a comment, if I may.
Absolutely, Mark.
Looks like this whole situation has really, I've heard the term, pushed us into the future. And it's caused a lot of folks in businesses to take existing technologies that were already there and put them in full use immediately. And I think we're going to see changes in the future as business and people move forward and start incorporating many of these technologies that were there, but now are being used much more effectively. And we'll see changes in how we do business from now on.
Great comment.
Agreed.
I'm curious if those that are still on the line, if you're going to continue, if you plan on continuing to use virtual meetings, or once the pandemic is lifted, if you're going to immediately go back to face-to-face, and if there's a desire either way. Anybody have a comment?
I don't think we in Santa Barbara have thought that far ahead yet. We have a pretty young city council right now, so I'm anticipating that we're going to have some form of virtual participation in the future. I mean, we're getting hundreds of people participating that are new to this process, new to the government process. It seems like people are younger using this technology and actually, you know, participating in a council meeting versus our not older people, but you know, yeah, right, exactly. I'm trying to figure out how to phrase it.
Our standbys.
Our standbys. Thank you.
It's a new and different group of people that have been participating. You know, the folks that had been coming in person, a lot of them are still participating virtually, but we have a brand new passel of people, so it'll be interesting seeing how they work, if they're going to keep that available or not.
Yep. I mean, we're just discussing that right now in terms of how our meetings are going to look like after we start to come back. And I think, like, for us, it's most likely going to be a hybrid solution where the supervisors and commission members that want to come on site, you know, they'll be on site. And for the ones that are going to be participating remotely or cannot come in, you know, they'll be participating remotely. You know, I think this whole virtual meeting environment has definitely made a huge shift in terms of how we operate as a government TV station, right? One of the things that, you know, we discover is that, you know, once people get used to the technology, you know, they'll figure different ways of using it, you know, and then, like, one of the biggest shift that we saw is in terms of the community meetings. You know, they become much more engaged in terms of outreach, you know, because, like, you know, they're not restricted to a certain time or location to the meeting itself. You know, we've had meetings that start very late in the evening to accommodate people, you know, with their work at home schedule. And, you know, in terms of participation, you know, we definitely see a huge spike in the participation itself in the public process, or, like, you know, the meeting process. So I think the other, you know, big impact that we saw is a lot of the meetings that you know, weren't very visible. You know, now they have the opportunity to you know, really become more visible and, you know, be able to bring the issues that are affected by their commission up to the forefront. So I think those
so excuse me, Jack. So one of the issues that I think we have to consider, that even if you wanted to do a hybrid, even if you wanted to continue to do virtual, it's going to probably require the governor or some legislation to modify the Brown Act. I know that City of Monrovia posted that they would continue to do virtual because of one of the members has health concerns. So if hybrid or virtual is a desire, I think we're going to have to consider modification to the Brown Act. Sarah?
Oh, did I raise my hand? I'm such an expert user of virtual meetings. No, I agree with it. And in accordance with Monrovia, I wouldn't be surprised. We have one council member that has stayed, that stays at home rather than come into the office to work. So I would suspect there'll be some version of that.
All right, so perhaps that might be something for the city clerks to pursue with their within their city, and whether or not modifications to the Brown Act might need to be made going forward.
Absolutely.
With that, if there's no other comments, I want to thank everybody who's still remaining. We got 21 left. And If there's nothing else,
Thank you, everybody.
Great. Thank you,
Thanks,
everybody.
everybody.
Great to see everyone.
same
Nice
here.
to meet you all. Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks,
Thank you all
Sarah.
for sharing. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Kenya.
Take care.
I guess we're done. Thanks, guys. Great.